Now, my job in S3 was a very interesting job. When I reported aboard, the major that was in charge of S3 looked at me straight in the face and he said, "The lives of our Marines will in part depend on how well you do your work." Well, that was an interesting salvo for a Lance Corporal E3. You know, and I wasn't sure what he meant by that. But remember I told you about patrol overlays? It was my job to take the operation plans for the day, put them on a sheet of paper that outlined the patrol routes for all the patrols of 4 line companies, and give those to back out to the line companies, and they would have to follow them. Because there's nothing worse than your own people shooting at each other. And if I screwed those overlays up in any way, shape, or form, that was very possible. And then I could be responsible for having 10 or 20 dead Marines because I messed up the paperwork. So that was my job, and I took it very seriously. I didn't just do the paper and pass it out. Well, we also, after I completed that, we went to what we call the Combat Operations Center. And what we did there was track those patrols and make sure that they stayed on track. If they were getting off, we got them back to where they should be. Because they were dropping artillery fire, mortar fire, and all sorts of, and airstrikes all around these patrols. And so if they were off by even 1,000 meters, they could have all been killed. So I never lost anybody in that period of time. And finally, October came. And in October, I got to meet Susan in Hawaii on R&R. So I flew to Hawaii. We stayed at the Hawaiian village out there, which is still there to this day. And we had a glorious week. But a couple of interesting things happened that week. One is we got robbed. And how did that happen? Well, we were driving up Diamond Head. Many of you have already been to Hawaii, you've been on the Diamond Head Highway. Well, back then it was about a 2-lane road. And you could pull over and you could see all these beautiful rock formations. And Susan and I decided to go down and take some pictures. So we're walking down to the rock formations, and walking up are 3 Hawaiian guys. And since I had really good powers of observation, you know, if you knew what you were doing in Vietnam, you looked 100 yards in front, 100 yards in back, and off to each side, or you were dead. Well, I looked at these guys pretty closely. The one thing that I had forgotten is I had left my wallet in the car, because I wasn't used to carrying a wallet. Who carried a wallet, you know, in Vietnam? Nobody. You had your little name tags, your dog tags around your neck. So I realized that I'd left the money in the car, and I turned around, went back up. Well, there's my wallet lying on the front seat, and all the money was gone. About $300, which was a small fortune in those days. So we were standing there, not quite knowing what to do, when all of a sudden a plainclothes cop car came roaring into the parking lot. 2 guys jump out and said, "Did you just lose something out of that car?" And I said, "Yeah, about $300. He said, "Wait here." He takes off, goes up the road, and here he comes back with the 3 Hawaiians. So the 3 Hawaiians are standing there, you know, "Oh, not me, man, we did nothing," you know, nothing. But no money. The money was gone. So they took the Hawaiians and took them back into town. And Susan said, "Let's go look for the money, because if they don't have it on them, it's got to be where they were picked up." So we went up there and we looked where they had been picked up. Well, guess who found the money underneath a rock? That's right, Susan. Found all $300 of it right there. Now, another thing had happened before the cop left. He said, I said, "I don't know, we're going to look for the money." And I said, "By the way, if it's found, here's a list of the serial numbers of the bills." And the guy looked at me and says, "Who in the hell writes the serial numbers of the bills down while he's on R&R?" I said, "You're on R&R, you do one thing for a long time," and he said, "then you got to take a break." So my break was sitting out on the highway, and I was always had an aptitude for figures, so I wrote down the serial numbers of all the bills. Here they are. Well, we found those bills under the rock, called the police department. They came up and got the money, took it back, matched the serial numbers, and booked the guys. Then, just before we left, before I had to go back to Vietnam, the cops called and said, we might have to have you come back here to testify at their trial. Well, it broke my heart, because maybe that meant I could get out of Vietnam a little bit early. I don't know. So I went back to Vietnam. Susan went home. I was held over an extra day in Hawaii because of police and the information they needed. I didn't get in trouble when I got back to my battalion in Vietnam, and life moved on. When I got back, we had gotten orders at that time then that we were going to be an assault force that was operating off of U.S. Navy, basically a flotilla of ships.